Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Washington will support countries that believe Beijing has violated their sovereignty in the South China Sea. Speaking to reporters in Washington, Pompeo said the situation has shifted dramatically in the South China Sea region. Meanwhile, Chinese Foreign Ministry has accused Washington of stirring up trouble and destabilizing the region. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has visited the Diamir Pasha Dam site to review the development. Speaking in Chitral, Khan said the project will help overcome energy crisis and create thousands of jobs amid coronavirus-affected economy. Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa and Inter-Services Intelligence DG Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid also accompanied the Premier. The dam, with a power generation capacity of 4,500 megawatts, will provide over 18 billion units per annum to the national grid. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. We start a news bulletin from the U.S. where Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Washington will support countries that believe Beijing has violated their sovereignty in the South China Sea. Speaking to reporters in Washington, Pompeo said the situation has shifted dramatically in the region. He also said the U.S. will impose visa restrictions on some workers for Chinese tech giant Huawei. But Beijing said it's not afraid of any sanctions the U.S. might impose over the situation in the South China Sea. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying said Washington is stirring up trouble and destabilizing the region. She said Beijing hopes Washington will not go further down the wrong path. Meanwhile, China says it will impose retaliatory sanctions against the U.S. after President Donald Trump signed an executive order to end Hong Kong's special status. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said the territory is China's internal affair and no foreign country has the right to interfere. Earlier, Trump also signed Hong Kong Autonomy Act that revokes license expectations for islands export and special treatment for territories' passport holders. While the executive order sanctions individuals responsible for undermining Hong Kong democratic processes, Trump said the territory will now be treated the same as mainland China without any special privileges.
Today I signed legislation and an executive order to hold China accountable for its oppressive actions against the people of Hong Kong. The Hong Kong Autonomy Act, which I signed this afternoon, passed unanimously through Congress. This law gives my administration powerful new tools to hold responsible the individuals and the entities involved in extinguishing Hong Kong's freedom.
Moreover, China has accused Japan of prejudice over its 2020 defense white paper, saying it was full of false information. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said Beijing has recorded protests with Tokyo over the issue. Zhao said Beijing prefers the path of peaceful development and partnership with neighbors. The spokesperson said Beijing remains unswerving in upholding its sovereignty and security and development interests. He said any attempt to discredit China will be in vain.
China has stated its solemn position on this issue before. Japan's 2020 defense white paper is full of prejudice against China and false information. It tries to incite the so-called China threat. Though named a white paper, it is actually a compromising material exposing the dark mindset of a certain Japanese forces. China has made solemn representations to Japan.
On Tuesday, Turkey accused Beijing of trying to alter the status quo in the East and South China Sea by pushing its territorial claims. Now, moving on to Yemen, where airstrikes by the government coalition have killed 7 people in the northern province of Al Jawf. A Houthi spokesperson said airstrikes hit a residential area. He said 2 children were also among those killed. There was no immediate comment from the coalition, which has been battling the Houthi movement for more than 5 years. On Monday, the coalition said it destroyed 2 Houthi ballistic missiles and 6 drones launched from Yemen to target Saudi Arabia. In Israel, thousands of people have protested against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in front of his residence in Jerusalem. The protesters demanded Netanyahu's resignation over his government's poor handling of COVID-19 pandemic and alleged corruption. Police arrested 50 people and fired water cannons to disperse the protesters. Protesters blocked roads and set fire to trash bins in the city center.
With the country right now is our Prime Minister. And I'm not talking about the allegations, I'm not talking about anything, it's just everything is falling apart. We're talking about every sector of the country is just falling apart because this guy is a very bad manager.
Well, Netanyahu faces corruption trial on charges of bribery, breach of trust and fraud. Now moving on to Iraq, where hundreds of demonstrators took to the streets in southern city of Basra to protest against rising unemployment in the country. They were protesting against delayed payment of salaries of 30,000 public servants from Basra as Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi arrived in the city. Kadhimi's visit is part of his campaign against cross-border corruption and to chair his 10th cabinet meeting since he took office in May. Local media reported that 4 protesters were wounded as riot police prevented them from reaching the hotel where meeting was scheduled. Anti-government mass protests that erupted in October last year receded with the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. Kadhimi's government faces an economic crisis which caused the oil prices to plummet and thousands in Iraq to lose their livelihoods. Meanwhile, Turkey says it has killed 3 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in airstrikes during Operation Claw Tiger in northern Iraq. The National Defense Ministry said the military carried operations backed by air power in the Haftanin region. The ministry said Turkey will continue to destroy weapon caches and shelters used by the terrorists. It said over 400 Kurdish militants have been killed in northern Iraq over the past 5 months. State media said the PKK militants often use northern Iraq to plan cross-border attacks in Turkey. Moving on, in Brazil, 1,300 more people have died from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, raising the toll to over 74,000. While the US has reported 827 more fatalities with 61,000 new cases. The US death toll has now surpassed 136,000 and total infections are more than 3.4 million. Worldwide, the death toll has risen to almost 578,000 with more than 13.2 million cases. More in this report.
Many cities around the world have reimposed COVID-19 lockdowns to counter a resurgence of infections. As the World Health Organization warned, there were no shortcuts out of the pandemic. In the Americas, Mexico has proposed to the US an extension to a ban on non-essential travel by land over their shared border for another 30 days, as the US states of Alabama, Florida, and North Carolina reported record increases in daily deaths. Top infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci warned the actual number of nationwide cases could be much more.
First question is this just an increase because of testing versus an increase? Well, there's no doubt that it's both. I mean, obviously, the more you test, the more you're going to pick up. So increase in testing is going to give you increases. But there is no doubt that there are more infections. And we know that because the percentage of cases, of the cases that are tested that are positive, is increasing. Therefore, unequivocally, you're seeing truly more new cases.
Doctors in France have reported what they believe to be the first proven case of COVID-19 being passed on from a pregnant woman to her baby in the womb. Paris will also make it compulsory for people to wear masks in shops and public spaces from next month. And Spain's populous Catalonia region made a fresh attempt to put an area of 160,000 people under lockdown to stem a local surge.
The important thing here is to act to stop the outbreak, and anything that takes us away from loses focus. The priority is to act to contain, to control the outbreak. This is primarily the responsibility of Generalitat of Catalonia, and the Spanish government is there to lend a hand in everything that is asked of us. I emphasize, in everything that is asked of us. I must say that the climate of collaboration and the relationship is very fluid.
Meanwhile, in Asia, India's coronavirus cases, the third highest in the world, have passed 900,000 with more than 22,000 known deaths. 133 million people in the northern state of Bihar and the IT hub of Bangalore have entered a new lockdown. South Korea's new coronavirus cases stayed below 40 for the second day in a row, but imported cases continue to rise. However, China is further easing restrictions on domestic tourism after reporting no new local cases of COVID-19 in 9 days.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, COVID-19 death toll has reached nearly 5,400 with 67 more fatalities in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry said 2,165 positive cases were reported in the last 24 hours, bringing the total to over 255,000. It said more than 2,100 people have recovered from the virus in the past day, raising the tally to over 172,000. The ministry said over 77,000 cases are active in the country. It said the province of Sindh reported the most new infections with 1,151 cases. Punjab province reported 553 infections, while the capital Islamabad registered 113 new cases. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has visited the Diamir Basha Dam site to review the development. Officials briefed Khan on the construction progress along with other aspects regarding the dam. Speaking in Chitral, Khan said the project will help overcome energy crisis and create thousands of jobs amid coronavirus-affected economy. Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa and Inter-Services Intelligence DG Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid also accompanied the Premier. The dam, with a power generation capacity of 4,500 megawatts, will provide over 18 billion units per annum to the national grid. It will have a gross water storage capacity of 8.1 million acre-feet to irrigate around 1.23 million acres of additional land. The project is being constructed on River Indus, 315 kilometers upstream of Tarbela Dam. The dam will help provide cheap energy for the country's industrial development. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In North Macedonia, voting is underway for a parliamentary election which will decide the pace of the country's bid for EU membership. In the polls, governing pre-EU Social Democrats, SDSM, are locked in a close race with the main opposition Nationalist Party. The vote was originally scheduled for April but was postponed due to COVID-19 outbreak. Voters are casting ballots wearing mandatory masks. A recent survey predicted a narrow victory for SDSM, while another indicated a narrow win for opposition party. Former Prime Minister Zoran Zaev placed the country on the path towards EU membership by agreeing to add North to its name. The compromise resulted in North Macedonia becoming the 30th member of NATO, and EU agreed to allow accession talks. In Belarus, hundreds protested in the capital Minsk after two main rivals of President Alexander Lukashenko were barred from running in the election. The Central Election Commission refused to register Viktor Babariko because of the criminal case against him. Valery Topskalo was also rejected after signatures on a supporting petition were nullified. President Lukashenko faces strongest opposition in years as frustration mounts over the economy, human rights, and his playing down of the coronavirus pandemic. Police arrested scores of people in an effort to quell anti-government protests.
We witnessed how people were just walking in front of us. There were about 9 of them when riot police and people in civilian clothes ran out of the prisoner transport vehicle and detained them indiscriminately. They beat them too. I'm absolutely against everything that's going on. They just detain people and carry them away in the prisoner transport vehicle.
A woman has died and 2 more have been wounded after a series of late-night stabbings in Norway. First reports of the attacks came in just before midnight in the city of Sarpsborg, south of the capital Oslo. In a statement, police said the victim was in her 50s, while another woman was seriously hurt and a third suffered minor injuries. The statement said the arrested man will be charged with murder. Police said they are investigating whether the alleged perpetrator's mental health was a factor in the attacks. In the Czech Republic, a train driver has died and 35 others were injured in the country's second fatal train collision this month. Officials said a passenger train crashed into a stationary freight train near Český Brod, east of the capital Prague. Fire services said 2 of those injured are in a critical condition. The regional rescue service said the number of injured passengers could rise as the operation is underway. Railway officials said a major track linking the capital with the eastern part of the country will remain closed for a day. Earlier on 7th of July, 2 people were killed and 24 were injured in a train accident in the northwest of the country near the border with Germany. The Libyan army says it has spotted dispatch of military supplies from Egypt to the city of Tobruk in northeastern Libya. The military supplies were seen after warlord Khalifa Haftar said his forces are preparing for a major battle near the cities of Sarat and Al-Jufra. In April, the Libyan army released photos of an Egyptian vessel at the Tobruk harbor carrying 40 containers of ammunition for Haftar. Earlier, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi suggested that Cairo could launch external military missions into Libya if needed. Meanwhile, the Libyan army has found a total of 225 bodies from the mass graves in South Tripoli and in Tarhuna city in the last 40 days. Flash floods and landslides have killed 16 people and displaced hundreds in the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. Indonesia's disaster mitigation agency spokesperson said 23 people are still missing in the North Luwu district. A local official said heavy rains triggered the flooding and caused 3 rivers to overflow, affecting over 4,000 residents of 6 sub-districts. The official said the provincial road is covered in mud and the landslides have blocked off access to the main command post and the affected areas. Indonesia frequently suffers from floods and landslides, particularly during the rainy season. Earlier in January, flooding killed 66 people in the capital city of Jakarta. In Iran, at least 7 ships have caught fire at the port of Bushehr in the southern part of the country. The Iranian state media said no casualties have been reported so far. Since late June, there have been several explosions and fires around Iranian military, nuclear and industrial facilities. On Monday, a fire broke out at an industrial complex in northeast Iran where fuel tanks were placed. In Egypt, 17 people have been injured after a major fire broke out due to oil leak from a pipeline next to a busy highway in the Cairo suburb. In a statement, the Petroleum Ministry said passing by cars ignited the crude leaking from the pipe. The pipeline's valves were immediately closed in the area and the fire was brought under control. The state prosecutor said he has dispatched a team to investigate the reasons behind the leakage. The crude pipeline runs from the Red Sea oil port of Shuqayr to the refinery complex of Mostarad in Greater Cairo. US biotech company Moderna's experimental vaccine for COVID-19 is showing encouraging signs in early-stage human trials. The results were published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Researchers say 2 doses resulted in the development of high levels of virus-killing antibodies. They said antibodies exceeded the average levels seen in the people who had recovered from COVID-19. The report said over half of the volunteers reported mild or moderate reactions. Banksy has returned to the London Underground with a piece encouraging people to wear a face mask. A video posted on his Instagram page shows a man believed to be the enigmatic artist disguised as a professional cleaner. Banksy can be seen ordering passengers away as he gets to work, stenciling rats around the inside of the carriage. The work, called "If You Don't Mask, You Don't Get," features a number of rats in pandemic-inspired poses and wearing a face mask. In a statement, Transport for London said the art was removed some days ago in line with its strict anti-graffiti policy. Archaeologists have unearthed remains of residences of Aztec ruler Axayacatl and Spanish conqueror Hernán Cortés in Mexico City. Investigators discovered basalt labs as well as pre-Hispanic ceramics that were reportedly part of the Axayacatl palace. Cortés arrived in Mexico in 1518 on a mission to explore the region for Spanish colonization. He reportedly resided in palace shortly after entering Tenochtitlan.
The house where Hernán Cortés resided was built with basalt blocks and tezontle blocks. These materials are the product of the destruction of the Axayacatl palace. We know that the palace of Axayacatl was there because of various documents, such as the description given by the Spanish conquerors.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Saudi Arabia's Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman says the OPEC Plus is moving to the next phase of its oil cut pact. Speaking ahead of a meeting of the group's monitoring committee, Salman said OPEC and its allies will taper their output curbs to 7.7 million barrels a day in August from 9.6 million currently. The group is expected to ease their reductions as oil demand recovers after countries start lifting lockdowns. He said he expected cuts will be due to the compensation plan by 5 members, including Iraq and Russia. The minister also said there will be no increase in Saudi oil exports in August, as the additional barrels will be consumed locally. Oil prices have recovered to almost $43 a barrel from a 21-year low of below $16 in April. Europe's second highest court has annulled an EU order for Apple to pay $15 billion in back taxes to the Irish government. In its ruling, the court said the European Commission couldn't prove that the Irish government gave illegal tax benefits to Apple. The parties now have 2 months to decide if they want to appeal the latest ruling and take it to the EU's highest tribunal. The European Commission's defeat may weaken or delay its pending cases against IKEA's or Nike's deals with the Netherlands. China says the UK's ban on Huawei is a result of a political manipulation, not about national security. This comes as Britain said it will stop purchasing Huawei 5G equipment from the end of this year. At a news briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying also blamed the US for pitting countries against each other. She said Beijing will take all necessary measures to safeguard its interests following Britain's decision to purge all Huawei technologies. Earlier, President Donald Trump said countries that want to do business with the US must ban Huawei. The Wall Street stocks have jumped on positive vaccine news from Moderna and strong quarterly results from Goldman Sachs. US pharma company Moderna says its coronavirus vaccine produced a robust immune response against COVID-19. The stocks of Morgan Stanley and the Bank of America gained 2% ahead of their results. The Dow Jones Industrial Average traded nearly 1.5% higher, while Nasdaq also landed in positive territory. Energy, industrial and financial stocks led gains in the S&P index. Meanwhile, oil prices also rose after a sharp drop in the US crude. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.